Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundations. Nathan Reeves stared at the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. Behind the calm exterior of his steel-blue eyes lay a mind constantly calculating, analyzing, and planning. At 42, he had built Titan Industries from nothing into a silent powerhouse that operated behind the scenes of major corporations across the country. "Mr. Reeves, your 2 o'clock is here," Layla Morrison announced from the doorway. His executive assistant had been with him for 15 years, one of the few people he trusted implicitly. "Send them in," Nathan replied, not turning from the window. The meeting went as expected, another acquisition for his growing portfolio. No one would connect this seemingly minor tech firm to Nathan's other holdings. That was by design. Nathan had mastered the art of operating in the shadows, building a labyrinth of companies under shell corporations that all led back to him, but through paths so complex that few could trace them. That went well, Layla noted after the executives left. It did. Nathan loosened his tie slightly. "And Victoria?" Mrs. Reeves called to cancel dinner again. Said, "She has a charity event." Nathan nodded, his expression unchanged. 10 years of marriage had taught him to read between the lines. Victoria Powell had been a marketing director at a fashion magazine when they met. Smart, ambitious, beautiful. She'd seemed perfect. She'd supported him through the early years when Titan was just a fledgling operation out of a renovated warehouse. But as success came, something changed. The woman who once prepared midnight coffee during his work binges now seemed perpetually absent. At home that night, Nathan found a diamond earring between the cushions of their living room sofa, not Victoria's style. His suspicions mounted, but he didn't confront her. A man who built an empire on information knew the value of gathering intelligence before striking. The next morning, Nathan called his oldest friend and attorney, Thomas Quinn. "Tommy, I need a favor." "Discreet surveillance." "Vicky." Thomas sounded unsurprised. "Nathan, you sure you want to know?" "I already know," Nathan replied. "I just need confirmation." A week later, Thomas delivered a manila envelope to Nathan's private office. The photographs inside showed Victoria entering the Madison Hotel with Brendan Harlow, CEO of Meridian Tech, a rising star in the industry who had made headlines with aggressive acquisitions and flamboyant leadership. "There's more," Thomas said. "They've been seen together at least twice a week for 3 months. And he's made promises about leaving his wife, about Victoria's future." Nathan closed the folder. "Thank you, Tommy. What will you do?" "Nothing. Yet." That night, when Victoria returned from another late meeting, Nathan poured her a glass of the Bordeaux she favored. "How was your day?" he asked casually. Victoria recounted a fiction about client presentations and department meetings. Nathan listened, noting each lie with clinical detachment. When she finished, he smiled. "I'm thinking of expanding again, maybe into communications technology." "That's nice, honey," Victoria replied disinterestedly. "But shouldn't you focus on what you already have? Your little firm is doing well enough." Nathan caught the dismissive tone. Titan Industries was hardly little, but he had always kept the true scope of his business empire from Victoria, presenting himself as a moderately successful entrepreneur rather than the business titan he was. It had started as a way to determine who truly valued him versus his wealth, but over time, it had become a calculated obscurity that served him well. Later that night, as Victoria slept, Nathan stood in his home office, looking at their wedding photo. The woman who had sworn to stand by him now whispered promises to another man. His fingers tightened around the frame until his knuckles turned white. "So be it," he whispered. Chapter 2, Dissolution. Over the next month, Nathan became the perfect husband. He brought Victoria gifts, arranged weekend getaways, and showed interest in her social calendar. All the while, his investigators documented every meeting between Victoria and Brendan Harlow. The surveillance extended to Harlow himself, revealing a man whose business acumen was outmatched only by his personal ambition. "Meridian Tech is leveraged to the hilt," Layla reported during a private briefing. Harlow's expansion is built on loans and investor confidence. One significant failure could topple everything. And how is Meridian's relationship with Barrett Communications? Nathan asked, referring to one of their largest clients. Strained. Barrett's looking for alternatives. Nathan smiled thinly. Make a discreet approach to Barrett. Through our shell in Delaware. That evening, Nathan arrived home early with Victoria's favorite flowers. He found her frantically packing a suitcase. Going somewhere, he asked from the doorway. Victoria spun around, hand flying to her throat. Nathan, she faltered, then straightened. Yes, I'm leaving. For Brendan Harlow, Nathan stated flatly. The color drained from Victoria's face. You know, I've known for months. Nathan stepped into the room. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That I was too consumed with my little firm to see what was happening in my own home. It's not what you think, Victoria began, then stopped. Actually, it is. Brendan's different. He's going places. He has vision. And I don't. Look at you, Nathan. 10 years, and you're still running the same company out of the same office. Meanwhile, Brendan's on magazine covers. He's making waves. He's the man you're leaving me for, Nathan finished. So be it. His calm acceptance seemed to unnerve her more than rage would have. That's it? No fighting for our marriage. Would it make a difference? Victoria looked away. No. I'm sorry, Nathan. I want more. 2 days later, Victoria filed for divorce. Nathan agreed to her terms without negotiation. A settlement that included their apartment, a generous monthly allowance, and a clean break. His apparent capitulation surprised everyone, especially Victoria. He's just giving up? Diana Reeves asked her brother over lunch. Nathan's younger sister had never warmed to Victoria, sensing a calculating nature beneath the charm. That's not like you. Nathan sipped his water. Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. What war? Nathan, she's not worth. This isn't about worth, Diana. It's about consequences. Diana studied her brother's face. You're planning something. Nathan merely smiled. After the divorce was finalized, Nathan moved into a modest apartment downtown. He maintained his usual work schedule, though Thomas noticed an increased intensity in his friend's focus. Late nights became the norm as Nathan pored over financial reports and corporate structures with obsessive attention. Meridian Tech's board meeting is next week, Layla noted one evening. Harlow's proposing a major acquisition of Suntech Systems. An overreach, Nathan murmured. Barrett Communications? They've terminated their contract with Meridian. Our subsidiary has secured a preliminary agreement. Nathan nodded. Excellent. And the other matter? Layla handed him another folder. Full background on Harlow. Everything from high school to his current financial situation. The man has skeletons, Nathan. As Nathan reviewed the files, a plan crystallized. One that would require patience, precision, and perfect timing. Victoria and Brendan thought they were writing a new chapter. They didn't realize they were merely characters in a story Nathan was authoring. A story that would end exactly as he designed. Set up a meeting with the Phoenix Group. Nathan instructed Layla. It's time to make a significant investment. Chapter 3. Positioning. 6 months after the divorce, Nathan executed the first move in his meticulously crafted plan. Through a complex network of shell companies and investment groups, he began quietly purchasing shares in Phoenix Holdings, the parent company of Meridian Tech, where Brendan Harlow served as CEO. They won't see the connection, Thomas assured him during a secure call. The acquisitions look like normal market movements spread across different buyers. And our position? Nathan asked. Currently at 18% ownership. We'll cross the threshold for a controlling interest within 2 months at this pace. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. Good. And Victoria? Thomas hesitated. She's been seen looking at wedding venues with Harlow. Rumor has it they're planning something lavish at the Pembroke Hotel in the fall. The news didn't surprise Nathan. Victoria had always been drawn to spectacle, and Harlow's public persona demanded grand gestures. Their wedding would be a social event designed to cement their status and provide the perfect stage for Nathan's next move. Meanwhile, Nathan continued his apparent retreat from high society. He declined invitations, avoided industry events, and perpetuated the narrative of a man nursing wounds after a painful divorce. In reality, he worked relentlessly, strengthening his business empire while systematically identifying weaknesses in Harlow's. Bear Communications has officially signed with us, Layla reported one evening. And 3 other major Meridian clients are expressing interest in following suit. Don't approach them, Nathan instructed. Let them come to us. We need this to appear as Meridian's failure, not our poaching. As summer turned to fall, Meridian Tech began showing signs of strain. Their ambitious acquisition of Suntech Systems had stretched resources thin, and the loss of Bear Communications had spooked investors. Harlow remained publicly confident, dismissing concerns in a business magazine profile that featured him alongside Victoria in their penthouse apartment, formerly Nathan's home. He's arrogant, Diana observed, tossing the magazine onto Nathan's desk. But not stupid. He'll figure out what's happening eventually. By then it will be too late, Nathan replied. In late September, Nathan received a gilded invitation to Victoria and Brendan's wedding at the Pembroke Hotel. The invitation surprised him, a courtesy he hadn't expected. Are you going? Thomas asked when Nathan mentioned it. Of course, Nathan replied with chilling calm. I wouldn't miss it. 2 weeks before the wedding, Nathan's final pieces fell into place. Phoenix Holdings board members, concerned about Meridian's performance, privately indicated their willingness to support new leadership. Nathan's shell companies completed their acquisition of shares, securing a 51% controlling interest in Phoenix, and by extension, Meridian Tech. They don't know yet, Layla confirmed. The paperwork won't be filed until Monday morning. After the wedding, Nathan noted. On the eve of Victoria and Brendan's wedding, Nathan stood in his office overlooking the city. In his hand, he held the wedding invitation, tracing its embossed letters with his fingertip. Tomorrow would be the culmination of a year's planning, a masterpiece of timing and patience. To new beginnings, he murmured, raising a glass of scotch toward the skyline, where lights sparkled like the diamonds Victoria had always coveted. Chapter 4. The Wedding. The Pembroke Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with champagne flutes and diamonds, a carefully curated guest list of 400 elite attendees bearing witness to Victoria Powell and Brendan Harlow's union. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over ice sculptures and cascading flowers, a display of opulence that whispered of new money trying to announce itself. Nathan arrived precisely 30 minutes after the ceremony, slipping into the reception unnoticed while guests mingled during cocktail hour. He selected a glass of champagne from a passing server's tray and positioned himself near a marble column, observing the room like a field commander surveying a battlefield. Victoria looked radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than what most people earned in a year. Brendan stood beside her, chest puffed with pride, accepting congratulations from a circle of admirers. Neither had noticed Nathan yet. Didn't expect to see you here, came a voice to his right. Robert Powell, Victoria's father, approached with a tumbler of whiskey in hand. Despite his daughter's actions, the older man had maintained a cordial relationship with his former son-in-law. Robert, Nathan nodded. I was invited. Still, takes guts to show up at your ex-wife's wedding to the man she left you for. Nathan smiled thinly. I've never lacked for courage. Robert studied him for a moment. No, I suppose you haven't. For what it's worth, I think my daughter made a mistake. Thank you, Robert, but perhaps tonight isn't about mistakes. It's about consequences. The older man raised an eyebrow, but was called away before he could inquire further. Nathan continued his solitary observation until Victoria's high, melodic laugh drew his attention to a nearby conversation circle. Poor John, still working at that tiny firm. Victoria sneered to her assembled friends, not realizing Nathan stood within earshot. She'd spotted a former colleague across the room. I tried to light a fire under him for years, but some men just lack ambition. Her friends tittered appropriately, while Brendan smirked with the smug satisfaction of a man who believed he'd won a competition. The group shifted, and suddenly Victoria locked eyes with Nathan. Surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by something else, uncertainty. Nathan raised his glass in silent acknowledgement before turning away. He made his rounds through the reception, speaking briefly with industry acquaintances, many of whom seemed surprised by his presence. Throughout it all, he felt Victoria's eyes following him, her laughter becoming more brittle each time he glanced in her direction. An hour into the reception, Nathan was examining a floral arrangement when a hand clapped his shoulder. "Mr. Reeves," Brendan Harlow's voice boomed with false joviality. "I didn't know you'd be here." Nathan turned slowly, his expression pleasant. "Why not?" he smiled. "I own the company." Confusion crossed Harlow's face. "You what?" "The hotel." "No, Brendan. Phoenix Holdings. Meridian Tech. Your company." The color drained from Harlow's face as comprehension dawned. "That's impossible. The majority shareholders are shell corporations." "My shell corporations." Nathan took a sip of champagne. "Effective Monday morning, I'll be announcing a restructuring of the executive team." Brendan's mouth opened and closed without sound. Across the room, Victoria had noticed their conversation and was moving toward them, her expression concerned. "What's going on?" she asked, reaching for Brendan's arm. "Is everything all right?" "Your husband was just discovering that he works for me now," Nathan replied calmly. "Or did, I should say. His services won't be required after today." Victoria turned pale, her eyes darting between the two men. "What is he talking about, Brendan?" Before Harlow could answer, a server appeared with fresh champagne. Nathan declined politely, then turned back to the stunned couple. "I won't take any more of your time. This is, after all, a celebration." His smile never reached his eyes. "Congratulations on your nuptials. I do hope you've saved some of that settlement money, Victoria. You're going to need it." As Nathan walked away, he heard Victoria's urgent whispers and Brendan's increasingly agitated responses. The first cracks had appeared in their perfect day, and by tomorrow, their world would shatter completely. Outside the ballroom, Layla waited in the hotel lobby. "Everything is prepared for Monday," she confirmed. "Excellent," Nathan replied. "And our friend at the financial press? They've received the anonymous tips about Meridian's financial irregularities. The story breaks at 6 a.m., just before markets open." Nathan nodded, satisfied. "Then let's leave the happy couple to enjoy what remains of their wedding night. Tomorrow begins a whole new chapter." Chapter 5, Fallout. Dawn broke over the city with brutal clarity, bringing with it the first waves of destruction Nathan had engineered. Financial news networks blared headlines about potential accounting irregularities at Meridian Tech, sending the company's stock into freefall before the opening bell. By 9 a.m., Phoenix Holdings issued a statement announcing a comprehensive audit and temporary leadership change, effective immediately. In his downtown office, Nathan watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens while fielding calls from board members and major shareholders. Each conversation followed the same careful script: concern over possible mismanagement, promises of thorough investigation, assurances of stability under interim leadership. "Mr. Harlow is trying to reach you," Layla announced over the intercom. "Seventh call this morning." "I'm still unavailable," Nathan replied calmly. "Direct him to legal affairs." By midday, security footage from Meridian headquarters showed Brendan Harlow being escorted from the building, personal items in a cardboard box. Photographers captured his stunned expression as he pushed through a crowd of reporters, offering no comment. At 3 o'clock, Nathan finally took a call from Robert Powell. "What exactly are you doing, Nathan?" the older man asked without preamble. "Business, Robert. Nothing more." "Bullshit. My daughter's been calling me all day, hysterical. Says you've destroyed Brendan overnight and frozen all their accounts." "I've merely assumed control of a company I legally purchased," Nathan replied. "As for their accounts, I can't speak to Mr. Harlow's financial arrangements, though I understand the authorities may have some questions about certain transaction patterns." A long pause followed. "This isn't just business." "No," Nathan agreed. "It's consequences." That evening, Nathan's private elevator delivered him to the executive floor of Meridian Tech's headquarters. The space hummed with tension as teams of auditors and financial analysts combed through records under Layla's supervision. Nathan strode to what had been Brendan's corner office and surveyed the space that would soon be redecorated to his preferences. Sir, a security officer appeared at the door. Ms. Powell, Mrs. Harlow, is downstairs demanding access. Send her up, Nathan instructed. Alone. Minutes later, Victoria stormed into the office, a far cry from the radiant bride of yesterday. Her eyes were rimmed red, her designer outfit wrinkled. You calculated, vindictive bastard, she hissed. You planned this all along. Nathan regarded her calmly from behind the desk. Hello, Victoria. Marriage suits you. Cut the crap, Nathan. You waited until our wedding day. You humiliated us deliberately. Yes, he agreed simply. His frank admission seemed to deflate her rage momentarily. She sank into a chair across from him. Why? Is this what you wanted? To see us suffer? This is merely the beginning, Nathan explained. Brendan made enemies beyond me. The SEC has received anonymous tips about certain financial practices. The audit will likely uncover discrepancies. Victoria paled. You can't do this. We just got married. We have plans. Had plans, Nathan corrected. Now you have consequences. I'll fight you, she threatened. I'll tell everyone what you're doing. By all means, Nathan gestured expansively. Tell them how your ex-husband legally acquired a company and discovered potential improprieties. That should make fascinating headlines alongside the wedding photos. Victoria stared at him, finally seeing the true Nathan Reeves. Not the moderately successful businessman she'd dismissed, but a strategic mastermind who'd orchestrated their downfall with surgical precision. What do you want? She finally asked, voice hollow. Nothing from you, Nathan replied. Not anymore. You chose your path, Victoria. Now you get to walk it, all the way to its conclusion. After she left, Thomas arrived with a folder of documents. The forensic accountants found what we expected. Harlow's been manipulating earnings reports for at least 3 quarters. Make sure the evidence is delivered to the appropriate authorities, Nathan instructed. And the penthouse. Bank foreclosure proceedings begin tomorrow. Apparently, Harlow took out substantial loans against it that haven't been serviced. Nathan nodded, satisfaction coursing through him like a fine whiskey. The apartment that had once been his home, that Victoria had taken in the divorce, would soon belong to neither of them. Another piece of the life they'd built together erased. There's something else, Thomas added hesitantly. Victoria's father called. He wants to meet. Set it up, Nathan replied. I owe Robert that much. Chapter 6, Counterattack. A week after the wedding, Nathan sat across from Robert Powell in a private dining room at the Madison Club. The older man looked tired, the strain of his daughter's situation etched in new lines around his eyes. She's a mess, Robert said without preamble. They've moved into a hotel. Brendan's facing potential criminal charges. Their assets are frozen. Nathan cut into his steak. And she's still my daughter, damn it. Robert set down his fork. Whatever she did to you, this level of destruction seems excessive. I disagree, Nathan replied calmly. Actions have consequences, Robert. Victoria chose hers. She made a mistake. She made a choice. Several, in fact. Each calculated to advance her interests at the expense of others. Nathan took a sip of water. I'm simply responding in kind. Robert studied him for a long moment. You're not the man I thought you were. I'm exactly the man I've always been. Victoria just never bothered to look beneath the surface. Nathan set his napkin aside. I respect you, Robert, which is why I'm meeting you. But nothing will change the course I've set. As Nathan left the restaurant, his phone buzzed with a text from Layla. Emergency at Meridian. Harlow trying to access servers remotely. 30 minutes later, Nathan strode into Meridian's IT department, where security personnel surrounded a nervous technician. Explain, Nathan demanded. Someone used executive credentials to attempt access to financial servers, the head of cybersecurity reported. We tracked the IP address to Mr. Harlow's laptop. What was accessed? Nothing. Our new protocols caught it immediately. Nathan nodded. Double security. Change all access codes. And prepare a statement about potential corporate espionage for the morning press briefing. Later that evening, as Nathan reviewed reports in his home office, his security system alerted him to movement on his property. Surveillance cameras showed a familiar figure approaching his front door. Victoria, alone and slightly unsteady on her feet. When Nathan opened the door, the scent of expensive perfume mingled with whiskey greeted him. "Victoria, it's late." She pushed past him into the foyer. "You've won, okay? You've destroyed everything. Happy now?" Nathan closed the door. "What do you want?" "I want my life back." Her composure cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Brendan's lawyers say he might go to prison. The penthouse is being foreclosed on. My credit cards are maxed out. My own friends won't take my calls because they're afraid of being associated with the scandal." "Those sound like problems you and Brendan should discuss," Nathan observed coolly. Victoria moved closer, her hand coming to rest on his chest. "It doesn't have to be this way, Nathan. We had something once. Maybe I made a mistake." Nathan caught her wrist as her fingers began loosening his tie. "Is that what this is? You think sleeping with me will fix your problems?" "I'm trying to make things right," she whispered, leaning in. Nathan stepped back. "No, you're trying to save yourself." "Again, you bastard," she hissed, mask dropping. "You think you're so much better? You spent a year planning revenge. What kind of person does that make you?" "The kind who honors his commitments," Nathan replied. "The kind who understands that betrayal carries a price." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "This isn't over. Brendan has friends too, powerful ones. You think you've won, but you haven't seen what we can do when cornered." After she stormed out, Nathan made a call. "Increase security at all properties," he instructed his head of security. "And have someone follow Mrs. Harlow. I want to know who she contacts." The next morning brought news that validated Nathan's caution. Brendan Harlow had called an impromptu press conference, claiming whistleblower status and alleging that Nathan was the architect of the financial irregularities, using the acquisition to cover his tracks. "It's desperate nonsense," Thomas assured him, "but it might buy them time with some investors." Nathan merely smiled. "Let him talk. In fact, make sure every financial outlet covers that press conference." "You want his accusations broadcast?" Layla asked, surprised. "Absolutely," Nathan confirmed. "Because this afternoon, we're releasing the contents of Harlow's private server, including emails planning the accounting fraud dating back months before our acquisition began." Thomas stared at him. "You've had those all along?" "Of course," Nathan replied. "I never start a game I haven't already won." By evening, Harlow's credibility was shattered beyond repair. Financial commentators eviscerated his claims, and Phoenix Holdings stock rebounded on news of Nathan's appointment as CEO of both the parent company and Meridian Tech. In his new corner office, Nathan gazed out at the city lights, a glass of scotch in hand. The day's events had played out exactly as he'd anticipated. Another perfect move in a game Victoria and Brendan didn't even realize they'd already lost. "Next phase?" Layla asked, reviewing the schedule for tomorrow. "Proceed as planned," Nathan confirmed. "It's time to dismantle Harlow's entire network. Every ally, every contact, every escape route." Victoria had threatened that he hadn't seen what they could do when cornered. She was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But she was wrong to think they had any moves left to make. Nathan had methodically eliminated every possible avenue of escape, every potential ally, every hidden resource. The game wasn't just rigged. It had been decided before it even began. Chapter 7. Cornered. 3 months after the wedding, Brendan Harlow surrendered to federal authorities following indictment on 8 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The financial press covered his perp walk extensively. The once celebrated so, now hollow-eyed and defeated, led away in handcuffs while Victoria watched from the courthouse steps, alone and ashen-faced. "Bail's been set at $5 million, Thomas reported to Nathan that afternoon. "He doesn't have it. Nobody's willing to put up collateral." "What about his powerful friends?" Nathan asked, recalling Victoria's threat. "Scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Nobody wants the association. His lawyer's a public defender." Nathan nodded, satisfied. The systematic dismantling of Harlow's life had been comprehensive. Every business contact worn off, every potential investor shown evidence of his misdeeds, every asset frozen or seized. And Victoria? Living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Westridge, working part-time at a boutique owned by a former friend who took pity on her. The news brought Nathan no joy, merely confirmation that justice was being served. He never wanted Victoria destitute, merely humbled, forced to live with the consequences of her choices as he had lived with the consequences of her betrayal. That evening, Nathan left his office early, something he rarely did. The crisp autumn air felt clean in his lungs as he walked through downtown, eventually finding himself outside the boutique where Victoria now worked. Through the window, he could see her arranging merchandise, her movements mechanical, her expression blank. For a moment, watching her, Nathan felt a flicker of something. Not pity, not regret, but acknowledgement. The woman who had once shared his life was now living a fate of her own making. There was symmetry in it, a balance restored to the universe. As if sensing his presence, Victoria looked up. Their eyes met through the glass, and for an instant, the years between them collapsed. Then her expression hardened, chin lifting in defiance even as her hands trembled slightly. Nathan turned and continued walking. The next morning, Diana arrived at his office unannounced. "I saw Victoria yesterday," she said without preamble, "at that little shop in Westridge. She looks terrible." "I'm aware," Nathan replied, not looking up from his work. "Is this enough yet, Nathan?" "She's suffered. Harlow's going to prison. You've made your point." Nathan finally raised his eyes to his sisters. "This isn't about making points, Diana. It's about consequences carried to their natural conclusion." "There's nothing natural about this," Diana argued. "You engineered every aspect of their downfall with cold precision. That's not justice, it's obsession." "Perhaps," Nathan conceded, "but it's my obsession to see through." Later that day, as Nathan reviewed quarterly projections, Layla interrupted with urgent news. Victoria Powell attempted to access the executive floor at Phoenix Holdings. Security stopped her, but she created a scene, claimed she had evidence that would exonerate Harlow. Nathan's expression remained neutral. "What evidence?" "Unknown. She was escorted out before she could elaborate." "Have someone watch her more closely," Nathan instructed. "She's desperate, which makes her unpredictable." That night, Nathan's home security system alerted him again, this time capturing Victoria and a man he didn't recognize attempting to access his property from the service entrance. Security intercepted them before they reached the house. "The man is Alan Drake," his security chief reported an hour later. "Former IT director at Meridian who was terminated during restructuring. They had a laptop and portable drives." "What were they after?" Nathan asked. "Drake claims Victoria told him you keep evidence in your home office that could clear Harlow, files showing you orchestrated the fraud and framed him." Nathan smiled thinly. Desperation indeed. The next morning, Thomas arrived with news that Victoria had been arrested for attempted breaking and entering, then released on her own recognizance. "She's coming apart at the seams," Thomas observed. "This won't end well, Nathan." "On the contrary," Nathan replied. "It's ending exactly as it should." That afternoon, Robert Powell requested another meeting. The older man looked even more worn than before, grief etching deep lines around his eyes. "She tried to break into your house," he stated flatly when they were seated. "She did. Are you pressing charges?" "Not at the moment." Robert's hands trembled slightly. "She told me you framed Brendan, that you manufactured evidence." "She's lying," Nathan replied calmly. "Harlow's guilt is well documented by his own emails and financial records. Victoria is simply unable to accept that she hitched her wagon to a criminal." "What will it take to end this?" Robert asked. "Name your price. Whatever you want to stop destroying what's left of my daughter's life." Nathan studied the man who had once welcomed him as a son. "There is no price, Robert. This ends when it ends, when every consequence has been paid in full." As Robert left, visibly defeated, Nathan felt no triumph. This wasn't about victory. It was about restoration of a moral order, about ensuring that those who believed themselves above accountability discovered its inescapable gravity. Chapter 8. Final Moves. 6 months after Brendan Harlow's arrest, his trial began. Nathan attended the opening arguments, sitting near the back of the courtroom as prosecutors outlined the case against the former CEO. Victoria sat in the front row, a pale shadow of her former self in a department store suit, watching as her husband was portrayed as a calculating criminal who had defrauded investors of millions. During a recess, Victoria approached Nathan in the hallway. The security detail moved to intercept her, but Nathan waved them back. "May I help you, Victoria?" Her eyes, once bright with ambition, now burned with something darker. "Why are you here? Haven't you done enough?" "Justice requires witnesses," Nathan replied. "Someone should see it delivered." "This isn't justice," she hissed. "This is your vendetta. You used your money and influence to ensure Brendan couldn't mount a proper defense. Brendan ensured that himself by committing fraud," Nathan corrected. "The evidence speaks for itself." Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell everyone how you orchestrated all of this, how you manipulated the situation to exact revenge." Nathan remained impassive. "You're welcome to try. Perjury carries significant penalties. It's not perjury if it's true. A distinction that requires evidence," Nathan noted, "which you lack." As Victoria stalked back to the courtroom, Thomas joined Nathan. "She seems determined." "Desperation often resembles determination," Nathan observed, "but lacks staying power." 2 days later, Victoria took the stand as a character witness for her husband. Under careful questioning from Harlow's public defender, she painted a picture of a dedicated businessman blindsided by corporate espionage and a vindictive ex-husband's machinations. When the prosecutor rose for cross-examination, everything changed. "Mrs. Harlow, did you access your husband's private email account during your relationship?" Victoria blinked in surprise. "Occasionally. We shared passwords." "And did you forward certain emails from that account to your personal email on March 15th of last year?" Color drained from Victoria's face. "I may have. For safekeeping." "These emails." The prosecutor held up printed documents, including this exchange where Mr. Harlow explicitly discusses manipulating quarterly earnings reports with the CFO. Victoria's eyes darted to Brendan, who stared back in dawning horror. "I don't recall specific." "Mrs. Harlow, did you attempt to sell these emails back to Meridian Tech 3 weeks ago through an intermediary?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge called for order as Victoria sat frozen on the stand. "No," she finally whispered. "We have recorded conversations indicating otherwise." The prosecutor continued relentlessly. "Conversations where you offered to make evidence disappear for $2 million. By the time Victoria left the stand, her credibility was shattered. Brendan wouldn't look at her as she passed the defense table. The betrayer had been betrayed, a symmetry that Nathan appreciated as he watched from the gallery. That evening, as Nathan was preparing to leave his office, Layla announced an unexpected visitor, Diana, accompanied by Robert Powell. "This has gone far enough," Diana stated without preamble. "Victoria attempted suicide this afternoon." Nathan's expression remained neutral, though something flickered in his eyes. "Is she?" "She'll live," Robert interrupted, voice ragged. "No thanks to you. I'm not responsible for Victoria's actions," Nathan replied. "The hell you're not," Robert shot back. "You systematically destroyed everything in her life, drove her to desperation. She made choices, Robert. So did Harlow. I merely ensured they faced the consequences of those choices." Diana stepped forward. "This isn't you, Nathan. The brother I know isn't this cold." "Perhaps you never truly knew me," Nathan suggested. "Few people do." After they left, Nathan stood at his window for a long time, watching darkness settle over the city. Victoria's attempted suicide should have been merely another data point in a ledger of consequences. Instead, it disturbed the perfect equilibrium he'd maintained throughout his campaign of retribution. The next morning, Nathan directed his legal team to ensure Victoria received appropriate psychiatric care. It wasn't mercy, merely an adjustment to ensure the consequences remained proportional. Justice required calibration, not abandonment. 3 days later, the jury returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. Brendan Harlow, once celebrated as a business visionary, now faced up to 20 years in federal prison. As he was led away, his eyes found Nathan in the gallery. There was no anger there, only a hollow recognition. one man acknowledging another who had bested him completely. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Nathan for comment. As the new CEO of Meridian Tech, what's your response to the verdict? One shouted. Nathan faced the cameras calmly. Justice has been served. Meridian's focus now is on rebuilding trust with our investors and clients through transparency and ethical leadership. And Mrs. Harlow's allegations that you orchestrated her husband's downfall as revenge for their affair? A small, cold smile touched Nathan's lips. The evidence spoke for itself. Mr. Harlow's actions were his own, as were the consequences. As the reporters dispersed, Nathan noticed Robert Powell watching from the courthouse steps. The older man's expression carried no anger now, only a profound weariness. Nathan nodded, once in acknowledgement, before turning away. The game was over. He had won completely. Chapter 9, Legacy. 1 year after Brendan Harlow's conviction, Nathan stood on the balcony of his penthouse, overlooking a city that now bore his unmistakable imprint. Meridian Tech, reborn under his leadership, had become the crown jewel in his expanding empire. The scandal that had destroyed Harlow was now merely a footnote in the company's history, a cautionary tale about ethical failures. The board approved the Reynolds acquisition, Layla reported, joining him with a tablet displaying the day's agenda. And Victoria Powell's divorce from Harlow was finalized yesterday. Nathan nodded, the information noted and filed away. Victoria had reverted to her maiden name, a symbolic severing of ties to the man whose fate she had once tied to her own. Reports indicated she had moved to another state, attempting to rebuild some semblance of a life far from the wreckage of her past. Mr. Powell is in the lobby, Layla added. He doesn't have an appointment. Nathan considered for a moment. Send him up. Robert Powell had aged a decade in the past year, grief and stress etching permanent lines in his face. Still, he carried himself with dignity as he entered Nathan's office. Thank you for seeing me, he began. I know we haven't parted on the best terms. What can I do for you, Robert? Nathan asked, gesturing to a chair. The older man sat heavily. I'm moving, retiring to Arizona. Wanted to say goodbye properly. I see. Nathan studied him. How is Victoria? Starting over in Colorado. Teaching at a community college. Robert sighed. She's different now. Quieter. More thoughtful, perhaps. Nathan nodded, unsurprised. Consequences changed people, as his own divorce had changed him, hardening something inside that had once been malleable. I've had a lot of time to think, Robert continued, about what happened, about your role in it, and I've concluded that everyone involved bears responsibility. Victoria for her choices, Harlow for his crimes. Robert looked directly at Nathan. And you, for the calculated brutality of your response. Nathan didn't disagree. We all make choices. That's just it, Robert said. You didn't have to choose this path. You could have moved on, found happiness elsewhere. Instead, you dedicated years to destroying them. Justice required nothing less, Nathan replied simply. Robert shook his head sadly. That wasn't justice, Nathan. It was vengeance. And vengeance leaves nothing but ashes, including for the one who deals it. After Robert left, Nathan returned to the balcony, considering the old man's words. Was there truth in them? Had his pursuit of justice, of consequences, extracted a prize from him as well? He dismissed the thought. Sentimentality was a luxury he'd abandoned long ago. The world operated on principles of action and consequence. He had simply ensured those principles were upheld. That evening, Thomas joined him for their monthly dinner, a tradition that had survived Nathan's transformation from betrayed husband to avenging architect. I heard Victoria's moved to Colorado, Thomas mentioned casually. Teaching English or something. So Robert said. Thomas studied his oldest friend. Is it over now, Nathan? Truly over. It was over the moment the verdict came down, Nathan replied. Everything since has merely been denouement. And you? What's next for the man who destroyed his enemies so completely? Nathan considered the question. His business empire continued to expand. His influence grew daily. Yet beneath it all lay a singular truth. He had become a man defined by his response to betrayal. The ruthlessness that had served him in exacting justice had become his primary attribute, coloring every relationship, every decision. Business as usual, he finally answered. There's a technological innovation division I'm considering acquiring. Later, alone in his penthouse, Nathan reviewed a folder Layla had prepared, updates on various people connected to the Harlow case. Diana had recently become engaged. Thomas was considering scaling back his practice. In Victoria, a final photograph showed her outside a Colorado community college, her expression subdued but composed as she carried a stack of papers. Nathan closed the folder. The woman in that photograph was no longer relevant to his life. She had paid for her betrayal in full. Justice had been served. As he poured himself a scotch, Nathan caught his reflection in the window glass. The man who stared back was harder than the one Victoria had married, colder, more calculating, utterly unforgiving. Success had come at a price, but it was one he'd willingly paid. In a world where loyalty was rare and betrayal common, he had established himself as a man who neither forgave nor forgot. It was not, perhaps, the legacy most men would choose, but it was the one Nathan Reeves had forged through fire and loss and calculated vengeance. A legacy not of love or generosity, but of consequences, swift, merciless, and absolute. And in the final accounting, that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.